Good evening. My name is Christine Binger. This is my EDL 853 Module 3 video. I interviewed 3 people for this module. My vice principal at my current school, he's one of the assistant principals at Kansas City Public Schools East High School, and he oversees my department, the English department, and the ELL department. The special education teacher that I interviewed was a friend of mine from college. She actually taught social studies for 4 years and then is now in her first year of teaching SPED, so she's in that transition, so she offered a lot of insight for that. And the third person I interviewed was a paraprofessional who I worked with my first year teaching. She is phenomenal, one of the best anybody that I know talks about. She really does her job well and does it really well with the students. So those were the 3 people I interviewed. And the first question that I asked was about the child fine procedures. They all had unique perspectives. The administrator focused on the PST program and how we go through cycles of first let's try interventions and track data on those interventions and see what works and doesn't work and see if we can evaluate that way. If that doesn't work and they realize they need to bring in SPED, then they bring in special ed services and they see if they qualify for SPED, and there's a process for that. And at that point, there's a ton of parent involvement to see what the student needs and how we can help them. The SPED teacher says she's kind of unsure about this. She said that usually by the time they get to high school, students are already in the SPED department or not. And so oftentimes they aren't really needing to identify students like that. They will do interventions as students need it, but they don't offer services usually or need to delegate services. And the paraprofessional says she was not sure how this worked. She said that she oftentimes is asked about students, but she doesn't know how much that plays a role in something like this. The next question is, what do they find to be the most challenging part of their role in regards to special education? The special education said patience for both staff and students. She said specified patience for students because sometimes their behavior is off the wall and they are very defiant, and so working with that in a respectable and ethical way, as well as working with teachers who are non-compliant in a respectful and ethical way. Teachers are required to follow IEPs. However, when they don't, she has to manage that and have those tough conversations. The administrator said to ensure that we're giving special needs enough life skills. He said he worries, and this is why he considered it challenging, that oftentimes we may be offering too many resources to special ed students, and worries that when they leave high school, will they survive without those resources or find a way to supplement those resources. So he specified that as the thing that wears on him the most. And then the para said inconsistency across working with students working with different teachers in different paras. She said that sometimes one para will do all the work for them, and then another para expects a student to do all the work and helps walk them through it, and everything in between. So the lack of consistency in how we deal with different students' needs sometimes can be the most challenging part of their job. But then for the most rewarding part, the administrator specified that on his shittiest day, he can go see the students with special needs, and he's referring to the severe special needs in what we at our school call the North Wing. And they are just happy and authentic, and he specified wishing that more people were like that, because you either kind of have it or you don't, and you need to learn it in your own way to just be respectful and accept people for who they are, and those kids definitely do, he said. The special education teacher specified seeing students improving as the most rewarding part, the light bulb going off, and that usually happens when teachers are willing to work together and do what they can to help the student in their classroom. And the para said just helping a student when no one else can sometimes, but also building a relationship with that student. She said that sometimes she works with kids all 4 years of their high school experience, and I, as an English teacher, only get them for 1 year. So she has a different kind of relationship with some of these students that can be very beneficial, and it's cool for her to see where they go. The next question is, what advice do they have on supervision of special education staff, including paras, speech pathologists, and etc.? The administrator made me laugh because he said you got to keep your eyes on them, and he meant that the advice that he would give a para or a speech pathologist is you have to watch them, because sometimes, and again he's referencing the severe special needs, they can bolt out the door so fast, or they can grab something they shouldn't, and it can be harmful to the learning environment. The special education teacher said communication with all teachers and willing to work for students' needs is the most important piece of advice she would give everybody, because you have to work together to make these goals a reality. And the para said that the advice would be that she is more than a babysitter and that she would like to be acknowledged by more than just the teacher she works with and be evaluated and offered feedback from more people like an administrator. And she specified that that's been the toughest thing is because she gets evaluated every year by 7 teachers, and most teachers only get evaluated by 1 person, and she would like more feedback to improve than that. How do they work effectively with parents of special needs students? The paraprofessional said she does not work with parents unless she knows a parent personally just around town. Then they'll talk about the student, but other than that, she doesn't speak to parents very often unless something huge occurs, but she doesn't talk to parents that often. The administrator said that sometimes you just have to listen. You have to be the person that the parent can cry to, especially when you're considering what type of special needs you're working with. Sometimes these parents are overwhelmed and exhausted from all that they're going through at home and managing their child's needs, that sometimes you are the person that they are leaning on. And to just communicate and know that you're all there working together is the best piece of advice for that. And the SPED teacher specified that she has minimal parent involvement because of her demographic and what she's working with. And oftentimes she doesn't even meet parents through IEPs because they don't show up. But she also said that it's important to call home for negatives and positives. Students hear about those positives and the negatives, so it's always good for both the parent and the student and you as a group to have these negative and positive conversations that are going to impact their willingness to learn. Next is, how do they work with regular ed teachers with students with special needs? The paraprofessional said that different teachers want different things, so to just be aware of that. If a teacher wants you to be hands-on with all the students, then that's what you need to do. And then another teacher might want you to observe. So you have to be aware and kind of understand what each teacher's wanting and try to accommodate that, because at the end of the day, it is their classroom. But also ask them for help and ask them for advice, because again, they know the students sometimes a whole lot better than you do. And they have a lot of insight as to what has worked before and what hasn't worked. So that was her biggest piece of advice. The administrator said because there are minimal SPED classes offered, he wants to ensure that teachers are aware of expectations for IEPs and how to run their daily lessons to accommodate for that. I can see how that's a big concern, because when I was in school, there was only 1 special education class. And so learning to work with a co-teacher my first time, which was my 2nd year teaching, was daunting because it was her first year in SPED. So it was overwhelming. But by my 3rd year, I felt like I had gotten a new cooperating teacher, and it was phenomenal. I learned so much. So that's important. And the SPED teacher just said to work together and share ideas and opinions. I loved working with my co-teacher at my last school, and it changed my teaching methods so much, and it was really helpful. And so communicating issues and struggles and willing to learn from each other is important. And then also, if you need a SPED teacher to come to your class to help assess a student or see what you're doing wrong, ask for that. They are there to help you. So that's what she said has worked for her. The next question is, what advice do they have for a first-year administrator? The paras said to get to know the paras. They, in essence, are like educators as well, and they are overlooked for that because they don't have a teaching degree. So get to know them like you would all the other teachers, and that, she said, would greatly impact how you are as an administrator. The administrator said it's going to be horrible, and that hell were his exact words. Stay organized, make lists, be willing to say no, especially if teachers are asking you for discipline issues daily. You need to say no, and you need to help those teachers manage those discipline issues so that they aren't getting undermined by the end of the year. And then he said balance your after-school life, which until I worked in the demographic that I'm currently working in, I didn't really realize what that meant. And it was a struggle my first semester because I wasn't giving time for myself. And I've done so much better this semester because when I leave school, and you just have to have that balance. And then the special education teacher said to work with your special education teachers and communicate and be willing to learn from each other, but also help each other as needed, and it can change the entire way that you work together for the year. How do they describe the role of the special education teacher and the building principal? The special education teacher said that they need to have a mutual trust and respect for each other, especially when it comes to disciplinary issues, because sometimes students with special needs are disciplined differently than a regular gen ed student, because depending on what their need is, they need something different. And the building principal sets the tone for how everybody feels about it, special ed. So if you are gung-ho and you're willing to help and learn and you make it a priority, then other teachers will too. The administrator said that he actually works with the SPED coordinator, and the coordinator shares the information from their meeting out with the SPED teachers. So he said unless he's directly over somebody evaluating them and their SPED teacher, he works through her, which is interesting, but I guess that's what's been working for them. And the parent just said to have respect and communication, tell us when we're doing something or not doing something, and do it in a way that's helpful. What characteristics do they seek in aspiring administrators in regards to special education? The administrator said to have an understanding of special education and IEPs, and to know the differences in things such as push-in and self-contained classrooms. These are clear things, they're cut and dry, they're required, but he also said know the students' needs that have special needs. So they respond differently, they interact differently, and just be willing to continue to work on that. He specified one student who every time that student comes up to you, he has to shake your hand first. Setting those standards and following through helps build a relationship and maintain the expectation. The pair said a willingness to learn about the students, because you're building a relationship with students that are different than the average individual because they have different needs. So just being aware of that and doing what you can to help learn about them is impactful to how they respond to you. And just to communicate with the SPED teachers and pairs the needs that are taking place. The SPED teacher said a similar thing is just to cooperate and a willingness to learn. I got the vibe from both of them, though neither of them said it, that not a lot of people are willing to learn about the SPED students, which is interesting because, like the administrator said earlier, sometimes they have the best perspective on things and can really hold true to that. So I think it's important to note that, I mean, we should be valuing the qualities that they bring, and sometimes people overlook that. Overall, in reflecting on this, the responsibilities regarding special education administrator for myself in the future is to be involved and be informed. I need to be aware of laws and regulations and expectations, but I also need to be involved in those things to really truly understand them. And I should utilize my special ed teachers to help me do better in that now and in the future as these things develop. In regards to leadership, I need to be prepared and model the expectation. If I expect my teachers to do a certain thing in regards to SPED, then I too need to do those things. And just setting that standard is important. And lastly, supervision is very similar. Be present and model the expectation, but also for students. If a student is expected to shake your hand when you greet them, then you should do that every single time. Set the expectation and supervise as it happens and help support everybody that's there. That is my video. Thank you for watching and have a good evening.